think one of the things that really sticks out to me is that element of this isn't just drive up or walk up and get food and go
Mm,
home. It's
no.
so much more than that. It's about building a community, and
Hmm.
like there is music and there is fun and there's kids activities and there's all this sense of play, really. And it's
Yeah.
not about, well, I'm needy so I need to go and get this help. It's really inviting in that way. How is it different than, say a food pantry or, just an organization that, I mean, not that to
Yeah.
diminish food pantries at all,
No,
that's not
no,
what I'm
you're not
doing,
at all.
but how is it different?
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, let me go back a little bit in my story to kind of set that up. Why the whole idea is keeping that dignity, and why that's important. I think there's two things I did in my life that really changed me a lot. One of them, I did a trip to Chicago where I did some mission work for stuff, and we went and volunteered at this inner city soup kitchen. I'd never seen one like it. When you walked up, the volunteers, it was set up like a restaurant, and they had someone out there, and like there was a host and hostess there, and like a homeless person would walk in, they'd seat them, then you come take their drink order, then you bring them salad, just like a restaurant style. Then afterwards, they clean the plates, they bring them dessert and coffee, and you would see people just sit there and just talk, just like just old men at a coffee shop kind of thing. And that moved me because it was like people would walk for over a mile just to eat dinner here because it was that restoring that dignity. Because sometimes we take for granted I can go into a restaurant and do that. And so that always stuck to me. And then I did some work in Africa, and I did something very interesting. I don't always tell this story, but it is a big part of what I did. I called my contact before I went there. I said, "Hey, what do you need? What do you need? We're coming. We're getting ready to do. We were doing a whole big playground for kids, and we're going to go do some water wells and scout that out." I said, "Is there anything you really need?" He goes, "Yeah, we need a lot of condoms." I'm like, "Okay, that's interesting." and, and he explained to me, he said, "Well, what happens is women are treated as property here, and the men will go out to the fields, they'll work, they'll sleep with whoever, they'll come back and they infect their wives with HIV and AIDS, and then the children do the same, and it's a very high concentration." I was like, "Well, absolutely." So this is a point where I'm a senior pastor at a smaller Baptist church. So Baptist church, that's kind of interesting. I wasn't thinking, so I just go to my church phone. I call up Trojan, and they're like, "Hey, I need to order 10,000 condoms." And the lady's like, "Why?" I go, "I'm going on vacation." And she's like, and I know she looked at the caller ID and it's all the churches. They're like, "What in the world is going on?" I said, "I'm kidding. This is what I'm doing." And to this day, the leadership of that church, the deacons still don't know I did this, but they probably will now. So we got 10,000 condoms shipped, and one of the guys owned a pawn shop. So we filled the two suitcases full of condoms, and literally I smuggled them in to Africa, to Morocco. Almost got busted. That scared me. But then when we walked into the women's shelter and we handed those suitcases over, the ladies running the shelter, they started bawling because they're like, we can protect our women. And those two things just kind of hit me that no one should ever feel like they don't have dignity. No one should ever be treated as property or have to figure out a way to keep themselves safe. And so that's kind of the part of the DNA of what we do with Food on the Move. We're not a program, we're really a movement, because what we want to do is we go into a community, we'll go into a food desert, and we're going to bring a lot of fun and a lot of excitement, because it's got to be hard enough to say, "Hey, you know what? I don't have anything in my pantry. I've got to go somewhere and ask someone to give me something." That's a very humbling, very difficult place to be. So we want to take all that away. And so when you come up to one of our events, you always hear us before you see us, because there's a DJ at every event. It's the right thing to do. And when your founder's a pop star, I think it's a requirement. So we do that. And then everyone gets a 30-pound bag of fresh produce. And then they get a meal from a local food truck. Because food trucks are really cool, they're really trendy. But when you're living in North Tulsa, deep into a food desert, chances of you eating from a food truck is pretty slim to none. And those meals are donated from those food trucks. And then we have like 20 different community partners, because food's that first domino. And when you don't have food, there's all these other things that begin to impact. So we'll have people doing cooking demonstrations and recipes. We'll have divots, which is domestic violence. We'll do health assessments. We'll do kids' art table. And then you'll do the cha-cha slide and the Cupid shuffle. And you see all that. And the whole point is to have fun. And everyone that's in that event, they're equal. They're the same. We have one of our volunteer positions. They're called ambassadors. I love them. And I always call them, they carry around those soccer mom cards, those blue cards that you pull out, when you're at the soccer field. Their job is to walk with our guests They take their produce and they go through the tables with them. They walk up to their car, they load their stuff, and their job is just to talk. Why are you here? What's going on? What do you need? How can we help you? And what we do is we go into this community. We bring all these resources like, hey, one stop shop, single parent. We target the last part of the month because that's when SNAP begins to run out. And we're like, what else do you need? What's the framework? How can we serve you? We do food access, we do education, we do innovation. We don't transform communities. I don't live in your community. I have zero business telling you what needs to happen in your community, but I can do this. So how can I help you here? And really, everything that we've done has been forged from just listening. And really, at the core of what we do, our guests are the number one, the biggest important thing that we do is what do you need? How can we serve you? And then how can we come alongside you? And what we really love is seeing our guests just move a step. Maybe they move a step, they get SNAP. Maybe they get TAMP. Maybe one of the people there offering jobs to get a job. They start volunteering with us. There's all these opportunities, but we like to see people move one step because our desire is empowering people and say, hey, this is where you are, but you don't have to stay here. I know that there's this idea you have to stay where you don't. And we want to bring whatever resources we can to you, to your community, so you don't have to do that. So that's kind of the whole idea of what we have going on. And from there, we really launched into a bunch of other things. But it all goes back to those community food and resource festivals. It's just getting to the heart of what's really going on and how can we serve a community by listening to that community first.